But I'm going to open us up in a word of prayer, and then we are going to get started for the morning. So go ahead and bow your heads with me. Dear God, we are just so thankful that we get to come here. And first of all, that we just get to worship you, God. We get to praise your name, and we get to study your word. God, we just thank you that you hear our prayers, that you hear the burdens of our heart, the pain of our heart, and just everything that goes on in life, God, that is beyond our control, and things that hurt us, and things that are just cause us to be in sorrow and pain. God, I pray for Case's family during this time. I just pray that you surround them with your comfort and with your understanding, God. I just pray that you are with them and that they feel your presence, God. They know that we are praying for them so hard. God, I just also lift up all the students in this room, that you just continue to comfort them, that you just surround them with your peace. God, I just pray that they are able to just dig into your word during this time when they don't really fully understand what's going on. God, I just pray that they can dig into your word and be comforted by it and just understand your unchangingness and how you are just always there for us, God, and you seek to hear us as we're going to study even today. God, just be with our leaders during this time, that they can just care for our students in the ways that they best need it. God, give them discernment, give them wisdom in how to handle conversations, and just encouraging our students well, showing them that they are truly loved and that they are just loved by Christ so much. God, I just pray for the words that you've given me for this morning, that they just are able to encourage the students, that they just understand what your word has to reveal for us this morning as we study 2 Samuel, but we also study through a little bit of the Psalms, God. I just pray that you are here with us and that your presence is known and that your Spirit speaks to all of our hearts this morning. God, we lift all these things up in the powerful name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, so my leaders, you guys can go ahead and head out to your Retreat Sunday as leaders in room 4. We'll miss you guys, but you got it. You guys will have a good time in there planning and talking with Jamie. Everyone else, you guys, go ahead, turn to 2 Samuel chapter 1. 2 Samuel chapter 1. So as we start here in 2 Samuel, we are continuing kind of the lifeline in the story of David. So as we left it, technically 2 weeks ago, as we were at Shulfest last week, we had the crazy news: King Saul has died. He has been killed by the Philistines, and technically killed by the Philistines. And we kind of see the progression of this story in this timeline now through 2 Samuel, that David is going to find out what has happened. And he is going to write a song of lament that we're actually going to study through a little bit. And then there's going to be kind of a lot of chaos that's going to happen in the next series of chapters here in 2 Samuel. We're going to see that there's a lot of civil war kind of fighting back and forth between those who were supporting King Saul and his kingship, and then there's the people who have been supporting King David, anointed King David and his kingship to come. And we're going to see that as this transition of power happens, there's kind of a civil war of those who were loyal to King Saul are still loyal to him, and we're going to see that David is going to have to come and kind of take care of some business to get the nation ready for his true kingship, and ultimately to establish his kingship in Jerusalem in chapter 5. So we're not going to go through a lot of that because, in all honesty, there's just a lot of chaos that's happening. There's a lot of killing, a lot of just awkward situations that happen here. But there's a couple things that we can really look at this morning as we just learn more about David, and we learn more about his heart and his relationship with God. And we're going to take a look into the book of Psalms and kind of take a glimpse at the actual heart of David as he is written in the Psalms for us, his true heart and how he has responded to God, how he has come to God in different seasons of life, and how that has led to the David that we get to see here in 2 Samuel. So I want you guys to turn to, obviously, 2 Samuel chapter 1. The first thing I want us to really look at this morning is, as I said, this kind of song of lament that he has for King Saul. And I want us to kind of remember the frame of mind here that David is in. David has been just in a season of running from King Saul. Saul has been pursuing him. He has been jealous of David and this power that he has been kind of collecting from the people, and he's just pursuing David to kill him. So we see David is hiding. He has run for his life. He has left everything that he has known just to run away from him and to save his own life. And we see as soon as David hears that King Saul has been killed, we see that he has this song of lament. And he is going to instruct the whole nation of Israel to mourn with him and to lament with him that this had happened. So I want us to read here starting in verse 17, just to kind of understand a little bit of what David's heart is in this moment and some things we can pull out from here. So chapter 1, verse 17. So David took up the lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan, and ordered that the men of Judah be taught this lament of the bow. It was written in the book of Jashar. Your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not to Gath, proclaim it not to the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. O mountain of Gilbo, may you have neither dew nor rain nor fields that yield offerings of grain. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan in life, they were loved and gracious, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. How the mighty have fallen. The weapons of war have perished. So here we see this kind of contrast of what was going on in David's life. He was running from King Saul. He was terrified of what Saul was going to do to him, but yet we see this incredible heart of love for Saul and his son Jonathan. And we see this amazing depiction that even though Saul was clearly an enemy of David, David understood that Saul was God's anointed. Remember, there were two specific times in 1 Samuel that David had the opportunity to kill Saul without Saul even knowing he was there. And David did not do that because he knew that he was God's anointed, that he was not supposed to take his life. And we see that he honored and respected God. And now as we see that King Saul has died, we see that David is still honoring King Saul. He is showing that he still has love for him and respect for him, even though he pursued him and tried to kill him. And I think we see this and we understand, like, man, that is truly a hard thing to do. To in your heart settle that, no, even though he is my enemy, I still need to love him and I still need to respect him. And I love how David depicts this to us because someone else also depicted this picture for us as well in Scripture. And this came from Jesus as he taught his disciples in Matthew. And he told them in Matthew 5:44, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That is exactly what David had done. He had already done that. He had already settled in his heart that he needed to love his enemy. He needed to love Saul and to lead his people in lament and sorrow for the passing of King Saul. And we see that this is very hard for us to do in our own lives. And very hard for us to see someone that we would maybe equate in our lives as an enemy, someone who has wronged us, someone who has maybe hurt us intentionally or maybe unintentionally. And it's so easy for us to have a heart that is angry and bitter towards them and does not love them or pray for them. Even though this is the command that Jesus gives to us, to love those around us, to give grace to them, even though that they have harmed and hurt us. And I kind of ask you guys, in your life, how have you maybe demonstrated this in the last couple of weeks or the last couple of months? Someone who might be considered an enemy to you, how have you treated them? Have you shown them the character of Christ? To love your enemy, to pray for them, to seek good for them and not evil, and to speak bad about them? I challenge a lot of you guys, you're probably, a lot of you in sports, a lot of you probably have played against teams that have maybe been very challenging, and what's something you usually end your games with? You got to line up, and you got to high five the people, you got to tell them, hey, good game, good game. That was the thing we always did in softball and baseball, and it was just, I don't know, sometimes it was hard to do. It was legitimately really hard to do because there may have been someone who has been marking you or who just did something to you during the game that rubbed you the wrong way. And you came up to them in that line when you're supposed to shake hands and say good game, and you maybe just skipped them. Or you gave them kind of a dirty look or something. Or maybe someone did that to you. I think it's easy to put us in that situation and understand, man, I maybe did not act with the heart of Christ in that moment. And I want to challenge you guys, how can you personally get better at doing that? What would that have meant to someone if you were wronged by them during the game and you see them after the game, you still give them a high five and you give them a genuine compliment as to how they played or what they did on the field or on that court? How much of an example of Christ would you have been to that person? For them to be like, wait a second, something's different about this person. They exuded a different spirit out on the court or on the field, and I just see this joy in them, and even though I did something against them, they were still kind to me. They still showed love for me. Maybe that's something you guys have been able to do in your life, but what about a ref in a game? Someone who's been officiating, and they made a call that you totally disagreed with, and after the game, you just blew them off, or you maybe made your own comments towards them under your breath. And I want you to think, deep down in your heart, was that really, truly honoring to Christ and exuding the characteristics of Christ in your life? There was an opportunity for you to probably go up to them and tell them, hey, thank you for taking your time, to ref our game or to ump our game or whatever it might be, and just an opportunity to show them love and to show them grace. They'd be like, who is this high school student coming up to me and thanking me, even though I made a call that they totally disagreed with and maybe changed the tone of the game that was going on? But if you do what Jesus had asked us to do here, to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, how much of a testimony of Christ's love and grace that has changed you can be poured out on another person? Let me tell you, it's incredibly hard to do. But I challenge you to set your heart in a way that becomes easier and easier. It's going to be hard to do, but it takes little changes throughout your life to be able to allow that to happen and to demonstrate those characteristics of Christ in your life. So as we keep on reading here, I want us to think through the kind of two little things that happen that we hear about David. This is something that I actually talked a lot about with our middle school students a couple weeks ago as we studied the end of 1 Samuel. And it's this section where David inquires of the Lord. And I think it's really important for us to look at these times that he inquires of the Lord and reflect on our own lives and how we do in these situations. So I want you guys to turn to chapter 2, verse 1. So this is right after the section we just read. So you see that David finds out that Saul and Jonathan have been killed, and that he ultimately will eventually now be truly king and will take the throne. But let's see, what is his next immediate step after having lament and respect and love for King Saul? What does he do next in chapter 2? It says, in the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah? He asked. The Lord said, go up. And David asked, where shall I go? To Hebron, the Lord answered. And then I want you guys to turn to chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 17. Chapter 5, verse 17. This is a little bit later in the story. The Philistines are coming to attack David and his men because they realize that David is now about to take the throne and to become king over Israel. So verse 17, so when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines came and spread out in the valley of Rahaim. So David inquired of the Lord, shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me? The Lord answered him, go, for I will surely hand the Philistines over to you. So you see here we have two instances in just these chapters of David inquiring of the Lord and hearing very specifically from God. Not just like a vague answer, not something that, is like he's showing his will in signs or anything, but he is speaking directly to David. As a Tyler Middle Schoolers a couple weeks ago, we had an instance at the end of 1 Samuel where we see that King Saul had inquired of the Lord of what to do in a situation. And then we also had another instance of David inquiring of the Lord, and we see that David always hears a very direct and clear answer from God. But Saul did not, and that was because of, some intentional sin and unwillingness to repent and to turn back to obedience to God. So God was not going to answer him in his request. But David has been seeking God his whole life. He has been putting his focus and his attention on God, which has allowed him to hear God in very specific and clear ways. And I think that's why we see it depicted here, and we'll continue to see it depicted when David inquires of God. He hears very clearly from God because he is truly focused on who God is. And focus is like a really important thing, not just, as a spiritual concept, but you guys understand focus is something that's very important in so many areas of your life. One of them is to get your driver's license. You have to be able to pass an eye exam, right? To be able to get your driver's license, to get your temps. You need to be able to focus well on the letters that are on your eye exam. So I personally have not been to the eye doctor, honestly, since high school, all right? That's really bad. I totally understand that, but I feel like I can see well. But there was a moment when I think I was like 12 years old. Me and my brother went to the doctor for, just like a physical and a checkup, and they have you do an eye exam. And let me tell you, I could not focus on those stupid letters on that door. It was really bad. My brother was standing next to me, and he did his thing, and then it was my turn. They have you cover one eye and then cover the other. And he's like, dude, you mentioned letters that aren't even on the poster anywhere. And I don't know what I was doing, but I just didn't focus. Something was not right that day. And it's clearly something was wrong, and I could not read what was on the stinking poster. It's so funny, and kind of another testimony of why focus truly matters in our life. So getting married this summer, we spent a lot of time researching a photographer for our wedding. You want to capture the moment. You want to be able to see and depict what had happened that day. And there's honestly some photographers who researched not that great at getting focused pictures. And it's really sad because you spend a lot of money to get wedding photos. But we see that if you don't have things quite in focus, it distracts you from the true intent of what they're trying to capture. It distracts your attention and it doesn't allow you to fully grasp what is going on. If you guys have ever tried to read a book, for those of you who own glasses, and you can't truly read what is on the page, you're struggling, you're straining, it's just difficult to see what your page is saying. Having your eyes be focused because of your glasses is so important. Otherwise, you run the risk of misinterpreting something or misreading something or not even being able to read something. Focus is a super important thing with our eyesights, but also with our sights on who God is. As I mentioned, David, I think, has an incredible focus on the character and the person of God. I think it's something that has started for him since he was a shepherd boy, where he would be in the fields, and as it tells us in 1 Samuel 15, he describes before he is about to defeat Goliath of how he had seen God work in his life as a shepherd, how he saw God's protection and his deliverance of David, and that David would fight his battles as a shepherd when he had lions and he had bears who would come to attack him. David had trained himself from a young boy how to focus on God, how to put his focus on the characteristics of who God is, who God showed himself to be to his parents, to probably his grandparents and his ancestors. David grew up knowing who God was, how God had delivered his people, how he had cared for them, he had protected them, he had provided for them, and he had guided them. David trained himself in that as a shepherd, which allowed him to defeat the beasts of the wilderness. And then it led him to conquer Goliath in 1 Samuel 17. And he was confident in who the Lord was because he had trained his focus on God. And he trained and he used that focus to defeat the Goliath, knowing that God would deliver him and give him the strength he needed and would give him victory over Goliath. And then you see it portrayed as we continue through 1 Samuel and into 2 Samuel, where David is fleeing from King Saul because Saul is jealous of who David is and the popularity that he is gaining and what people are saying about David. And he gets jealous and he loses sight of God, so he pursues David and tries to kill him. As David is in hiding in the wilderness, he's writing these Psalms for us, and we're going to go through a few of those this morning. And we get to see David's heart being focused on God, even though he is in a time of complete uncertainness and doesn't know what to expect. And honestly, he has every right to be upset with God. He was expecting God to bring him up as king, but here God has led him into a season of running for his life instead. He had every right to say, like, God, I don't deserve this. I deserve something else. I deserve to be on the throne, not running away from the king for my life. But we get to see in Psalms what David's heart looks like, how he processes these moments of life, how he continually reflects on the character of God, his faithfulness, his provision, his strength, and his guidance. And it's an incredible picture for us today. In this crazy season that you guys are in right now, with the news that was shared with you this week, that you get to come to God and share with him the pain and the struggle of your heart in light and in focus of who God is, of his faithfulness and his truth and his love for you. With that being said, I want us to turn, we're gonna turn to Psalm 57 first. I want you guys to turn to Psalm 57. This is one of the Psalms that David wrote as he was fleeing from King Saul. He is in the wilderness. He is probably confused. He doesn't know why this is going on. He's thinking, I should be king, but now instead I'm in this wilderness running for my life. What is going on here? I just want us to take a look at David's heart. Psalm 57. So he says here, have mercy on me, O God, have mercy on me. For in you my soul takes refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose in me. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. He sends his love and his faithfulness. Even though David's being pursued, even though David is hiding, he understands that God has a love for him and has faithfulness to see him through it. That it is not what David's purpose is, but it is what God's purpose is earlier here in verse 2. Let's keep on reading in verse 4. I am in the midst of lions. I lie among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. And then what does he say? Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be all over the earth. See, David recognizes the situation that he is in, the difficulty and the pain that he is in, but ultimately he turns his eyes to God and focuses on who God is and who he's demonstrated himself to be in David's life. And then the life of the Israelites. He understands that God is true and he is never changing. And he can have faith and he can have trust in that. His focus isn't only on the bad that is going on, the disaster that he's in that he says. His focus isn't only on that. His focus is turned towards God because he understands that God is above all of it and that God has purposed that to happen to grow David, to strengthen him, to make him more reliant on God. Verse 7. My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing, I will make music. Awake my soul, awake harp and lyre. I will waken the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples. For great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. This is happening in probably one of the hardest moments in David's life. An absolutely gut-wrenching moment of his life. And he is able to see God with ultimate clarity and focus. And as we I want you guys now to turn to Psalm 13. Psalm 13. So it's crazy. I got home on Tuesday, and Rebecca had just finished her sorry, this was Thursday, not Tuesday. Rebecca had just come home from her Bible study with some friends, and she came home and she's like, Aaron, you're never going to believe what our study was on today. They're going through this book together. And it was on Psalm 13 and how to handle seasons of pain and struggle. How to handle seasons that we don't know what is going on, but we can rest in the authority of God and his love and his unchanging faithfulness to us. And I want us to read this morning and read through a small little part from her Bible study that I think will encourage your hearts this morning. So Psalm 13 says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" Just think through how much pain David must be in as he's writing this psalm. To say this to God, to be completely open and honest to God as to where his heart is. Verse 2, "How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall." But this is the turning point, verse 5. "But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me." Even though he is in a season where he feels like he doesn't see God, he can still look to him. And he can still say, "I trust in your unfailing love." This is a trust that has been built for so many years. I pray it is a trust that you guys can start to create in your own hearts, in your own minds. It's going to take intentional work from you to do that. But I pray that you can see the importance of us doing that. I want to read for you guys the section from Rebecca's Bible study. I think it helps paint this picture a little bit more for you guys. It says here, but why can't I trust him without such obvious affirmation? Why do I insist on evidence of his constant care and presence in my life? I want to trust God no matter how uncertain or dire a situation appears. And then I read Psalm 13, and I received fresh insight into how to have such faith. Our key verse in Psalm 13:5 reads, "But I have trusted in your faithful love. My heart will rejoice in your deliverance." Amazingly, King David penned this declaration of faith only a few verses after expressing his hopelessness in his current situation. From expression of despair to a declaration of absolute sincerity in his deliverance. How could King David be so certain of God's deliverance in the face of such difficult situations? The first half of verse 5 tells us, "But I have trusted in your faithful love." David had seen God's faithful love in action. God had been trustworthy in the past, and David remembered. And since God's character never changes, the king knew he could still trust him. We can have the faith of King David. We can trust God when all seems hopeless or uncertain. It involves reflecting and remembering, looking back on our lives and seeing God at work, looking back and remembering his faithful love. And as we do, we can walk confidently into an uncertain future, trusting in our unchanging, steadfast Lord. I desire that to be your heart. I desire for that to be your understanding when life is incredibly difficult, when things happen that you have no control over, but hurts you and affects you in really hard and difficult ways. I pray that your attention, yes, can be on yourself for a little bit, but ultimately changes to God, who is unchanging, who has depicted his love for you incredibly well, who has depicted his love for you in his Son coming and dying on the cross for you. That is how much he loves you. He has fulfilled that love in an incredible way for you to see how Jesus lived his life so that you can imitate that with your own life and your own walk with him. That you can look directly to God every single time you go through a season that you don't understand why things are happening. And you can know that God has it in control. He is above every situation that you can ever be in. And I pray that you can have focus on him in that time. That you can do the really hard work while you guys are younger to put that faith and that trust in God. This weekend, you guys went through incredible lessons about the spiritual disciplines. Training yourself in those spiritual disciplines help you focus yourself on who God is, who his Son is, and how much he loves you and how much he is there to be faithful to you and to guide you, to be your strength, to be the wings to cover you when you feel like everyone is against you. We can rely on our God so much. And I pray that you guys in this season can start to do that, or can continue to do that, or to start back doing that if you stop doing that. So I want to ask you guys some questions. We studied the spiritual disciplines last weekend. How many of you are working on those this week still? How many of you, after the news that you heard on Tuesday, kind of stopped doing those? And you kind of lost sight of who God was? Losing Casey as your youth pastor is really hard news to hear. And it's going to hurt for a while. And it's confusing and it doesn't make sense to a lot of us. But you can take that before God. You can share with him your heart. You can be honest with him, just as David was honest with God in the Psalms. But we have to set our eyes on God and focus on who he is through the situation that we're in. And some of you may have just stopped doing your quiet time this week because you may have had anger or sorrow in your heart. But I pray that instead you lean on God even more in this time. You study his word even more intently, even more often. You're in prayer with him even more often. Because when the world around us seems to be crumbling or doing things that we don't understand, and we distance ourselves away from God, then I think we start to crumble and fall a little bit. But instead, if we follow the example that David set for us here, that instead we engage with the truth of who God is, the truth of who Jesus is to us in the New Testament, we can have strength to get through it. We know how to handle that then. And we can help those around us who are struggling even more. That is the beauty of the body of Christ. That we get to share the burden together. Your church has been praying for you guys so much this week. They've been helping you carry the burden all week. Because that's what the body of Christ does. I pray that you let Christ help you through this. You focus your mind and your heart on him and study his word and rest in that. Because that is never going to change. That is always going to be in front of you. When you leave this room this morning, when you leave to go to college in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, or you're out in the rest of the world as an adult, his word is always with you. His comfort, his understanding, and his love is always there with you. And I pray that you can see that. And I pray that you do the hard work of training that in your life now. Because he will be there if you ask for help. He will be there even if you feel like he's not. I pray that you can focus on him and the truths of who God is and who Jesus is. As you guys go and spend some time in quiet time this morning, I have some sheets for you guys at the front here that I'll have you grab. And there's a section on there for you guys to read through some of these Psalms that we talked about. And there's a couple more Psalms on there. And I want you to read through those and to reflect on what you learn about God's character in those chapters. What truths you see David revealing about who God is. And ultimately, at the end of that, I have an opportunity for you guys maybe to write your own prayer, just as David did. To be honest with God of how you are feeling, how your heart is right now. what you are thinking about, but also, more importantly, to identify who God truly is in your situation, who God has always been around you. And there's a section on the back for you guys to think through the spiritual disciplines that were taught to you last weekend. And to ask you guys if you've been able to put those into practice in your life, if you've been making new habits in your life, to seek to do those. Because those are going to draw your focus in on who God is better, and to understand him better in your life, and to see him better in your life around you. Lastly, before I have you guys come to grab those sheets, I want you to turn back to 2 Samuel chapter 2. 2 Samuel chapter 2. 2 Samuel chapter 2. So we're going to come back to verse 1 here. So this is where David, again, had inquired of God of what he should do next. And God clearly tells him, the Lord said to go up. And David said, where shall I go? To Hebron, the Lord answered. What are the next 3 words? So David went. David didn't question God. He didn't tell God, this is going to be really hard, God. I don't think I can do this. This is too challenging for me. I can't do this. No, he doesn't say, but he acts. He says, David went. And if you look back at chapter 5, it's the exact same thing, where David again inquired of the Lord. And the Lord answered him and said, go, for I will surely hand the Philistines over to you. The next 3 words in verse 20, so David went. David focused on God. He knew who God was in his situation. He clearly heard from God, and he was obedient and went. No matter what he had asked him to do, he knew that God would provide whatever David needed to do it. Just as David conquered Goliath, David knew that he would give him what he needed to defeat Goliath. God is going to send you to do something. And I pray that your answer is that you went, and you did it, and you honored the Lord in following through what he laid on your heart to do. Let me pray for you guys, and then you can come and grab your quiet time sheets. Dear God, we come before you this morning, and God, we are just so thankful that you hear us. We are so thankful that you desire to hear from your children. When we are in a season of joy, a season of success, and a season of great things happening in our life, but God, you also desire to hear from us when we're hurting and we're in pain, and when we don't know how to respond to the season of life that we're in. God, I pray that these students can be diligent in seeking you. They can be diligent in reading your word and resting in the truth of who you are, and that you are an unchanging God. You have never left us behind. You have never forsaken us. You are there just waiting for us. God, I pray these students can rest in that. I pray that they just encounter you in new ways in this season, God, that they maybe haven't done before. I pray that you settle in their hearts ways that they can honor these spiritual disciplines that we studied, ways to better focus on you and see you in Scripture and portray it in their life, God. I pray that they're able to handle this situation in a way that is honoring and glorifying to you and can show others the love they have for you and the guidance and the direction and the strength that you give to them each and every day, God. I pray that they can come from this more mature and understanding of who you are, God. Be with them as they go out this week. Give them the strength to do the things that are difficult. Give them courage to do the things that they don't think they can do on their own. God, be with them this week. Bring them back on Wednesday as they'll be with their D group leaders. I just pray that you bless them, God. In your strong and powerful name we all pray. Amen.